Moving into my first apartment was a big thing for me. I was 19. I had a job at a small bookshop. I did not make a lot of money, but I saved enough for a deposit, and for the first month's rent. The apartment was on the second floor of an old brick building. It was not a perfect place. The paint on the walls was a strange yellow color. It looked like old mustard. The kitchen floor had a crack in one of the tiles, and one of the windows in the living room did not open all the way. It was stuck. But I did not care about these things. It was my own space. That was the most important thing. I spent the first weekend moving my things. I did not have much. I had a bed, a small wooden desk, a chair with a wobbly leg, and many boxes of books. I put the books on shelves I built myself. The shelves were also a little wobbly. I arranged my clothes in the small closet. I bought a cheap rug to cover the cracked tile in the kitchen. I felt very adult. I could eat cereal for dinner if I wanted. I could listen to my music as loud as I wanted. No one was there to tell me what to do. The freedom felt huge. It was like I could finally breathe properly for the first time in my life. The building was mostly quiet. The walls were thick. I could sometimes hear a television from the apartment below, or muffled footsteps in the hallway. I liked the quiet. It made the apartment feel more like my own little world. I spent hours sitting at my desk, just looking out the window. The window overlooked a small grassy area behind the building. There were a few trees and a shared clothesline. It was not a special view, but it was my view. I felt a sense of peace I had never felt before. I thought, this is it. This is the start of my real life. It was a happy and hopeful feeling. Every small detail made me happy. The way the afternoon sun came through the window and made dust dance in the air, the sound of the old refrigerator humming in the kitchen, even the strange smell of the hallway, a mix of old carpets and someone's cooking. I bought a small plant and put it on the windowsill that wouldn't open. I named it Simon. I thought I would be very happy here. I imagined all the things I would do. I would write stories. I would have friends over for dinner. I would build a life for myself within these 4 yellow walls. The future felt simple and good. When I signed the lease, the landlord gave me the keys. He was an old man with a kind face. His name was Mr. Harrison. He told me about the rubbish collection days. He told me how to work the heater. Then he stopped. He looked at me for a moment. He seemed to be thinking about something. He said, "Just one more thing." He pointed his thumb down the hallway. The man in 2B at the end of the hall. He's a bit different. He mostly keeps to himself. Just try not to bother him. It's better that way. I did not know what to say. It was a strange warning to receive. I asked Mr. Harrison what he meant by different. He just shook his head. He's harmless, I think. He just gets very focused on his video games. Sometimes he gets loud. Just ignore it. This made me feel a little better. A gamer. I understood that. I played video games sometimes too. I imagined a young person like me, who just got a bit too excited about winning a game. I told Mr. Harrison that it was okay. I would not bother the man in 2B. I walked down the hall to my new apartment, which was 2D. I passed 2B. The door was closed. There was no sound. I forgot about it quickly. For the first few weeks, I did not see the man from 2B. I heard him though, exactly as Mr. Harrison had said. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear loud shouting. It was not angry shouting. It was more like excited yelling. I heard things like, "Get to the car, go, go, go," and they're coming from the west. It sounded like someone playing an action game with a headset on. It was a little annoying, but it did not scare me. It was just a part of the building's sounds, like the humming refrigerator. I just turned up my own music or put in headphones. It was easy to ignore. One afternoon I saw him for the first time. I was leaving my apartment to get groceries. He was coming down the hall. He was a tall man. He looked to be in his 30s. He had very short hair. He was wearing a gray tracksuit. He did not look at me. He stared straight ahead as he walked. He had a very intense look on his face. He walked in a strange way. It was a bit stiff and deliberate, like a character in a computer game walking. I said, "Hello." He did not say hello back. He just walked past me without a word. I remember thinking that was rude, but I also remembered what Mr. Harrison said. Just leave him alone. One night, I could not sleep. It was about 2 in the morning. I was sitting at my desk, reading a book. The apartment was completely silent. I did not even hear any gaming sounds from 2B. It was a very dark night. There was no moon. I looked out my window at the grassy area behind the building. At first I did not see anything, it was just shadows. Then, something moved. I saw a figure standing near the trees. I leaned closer to the glass. It was my neighbor. The man from 2B. He was just standing there. He was wearing his gray tracksuit again. He was not moving. It was very strange. I watched him for a long time. Maybe 10 minutes. He did not move a muscle. He just stood there, staring at the back of the apartment building. I started to feel a little scared. Why was he standing in the dark like that? Then, he started to move. But it was not normal movement. He started walking in a jerky, unnatural way. He would take a few quick steps, then stop. Then he would turn his head very fast, looking left and right. Then he would crouch down behind a small bush. It was exactly like a character in a video game trying to be stealthy. It was like he was playing a game in real life. He was acting out a mission. That was the only way I could describe it. He crept along the wall of the building. He pressed his back against the bricks. He peeked around the corner. There was nothing there. It was an empty patch of grass. But he acted like there were enemies everywhere. He even made a strange motion with his hands, like he was pulling the pin from a grenade and throwing it. He mimed the explosion with a soft poof sound that I could not hear, but I could see his mouth make the shape. I was not just scared now. I was very worried. This was not normal behavior. I thought about what the landlord said. He gets very focused on his video games. I wondered if he was so focused that he thought he was still inside one. He continued his strange routine. He army crawled across a small patch of lawn. He did a forward roll and ended up in a crouching position behind the clothesline pole. It would have been funny if it was not so creepy. The whole time he had that same intense look on his face that I saw in the hallway. He was completely serious. This was not a joke. He was in his own world. A world that seemed dangerous and violent, and he was right outside my window. I was still watching him from my window. I was hidden in the darkness of my room. He could not see me, or so I thought. He finished his strange patrol of the lawn. He stood up straight. He looked around one last time, and then his head turned. He looked directly up at my window, directly at me. I froze. I know he could not see my face clearly, but he saw something. A shape. A movement. He knew someone was there. We stared at each other for a long moment. His face had no expression. It was blank and cold. It was the scariest look I have ever seen. My heart started beating very fast. He broke the stare. He turned and walked towards the back entrance of the building. I quickly moved away from the window. My hands were shaking. I did not know what to do. Was he coming inside? Was he going back to his apartment? I stood in the middle of my living room, listening. I heard the heavy back door of the building open, and then slam shut. I heard footsteps on the stairs. They were slow, heavy footsteps. They were coming up. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped. They stopped right outside my door. I could hear someone breathing on the other side. It was a deep, slow sound. Then came the knocking. It was not a normal knock. It was a hard, loud bang. 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 It made the whole door shake. I jumped back. I did not make a sound. "I know you're in there," he said. His voice was low and flat. It was not shouting like when he played his games. It was calm. That made it even more frightening. "I saw you watching me. Open the door." I stood frozen in the middle of the room. My mind was empty. I could not think. All I could feel was fear. It was a pure, cold fear that filled my whole body. I was trapped. He started trying the doorknob. It rattled back and forth, very hard. Then he started pushing his shoulder against the door. The wood creaked and groaned. Thud, thud. He was trying to break it down. "I have something for you," he said. "It's a gift. Let me in." I backed away until my back hit the far wall. I slid down to the floor. I hugged my knees to my chest. I was 19 years old in my first apartment, and a strange man was trying to break down my door. I finally understood that this was real. This was a very dangerous situation. I had to do something. I reached for my phone. My hands were shaking so much I could barely unlock my phone. I dialed 999. I whispered to the operator. I told her my address. I told her a man was trying to break into my apartment. The operator told me to stay on the line and to stay as quiet as possible. She said the police were on their way. The banging on the door continued. It was getting louder and more violent. I could hear the wood of the door frame starting to splinter. I was crying silently. I was sure he was going to get in before the police arrived. Every second felt like an hour. Then, I heard sirens in the distance. The banging stopped. I heard shouting in the hallway. I heard a struggle. Then everything went quiet. A few minutes later, a police officer knocked on my door. "Police." "Can you open the door, miss?" a kind voice said. I was still scared, but I slowly got up and unlocked it. There were 2 police officers in the hall. They told me the man from 2B was in custody. He had hurt his hand trying to break down my door. One of the officers pointed to the floor. There was a small smear of blood on the hallway carpet. And next to my door, there was a small, dirty teddy bear. It was missing one eye. "He said this was for you," the officer said. "He said it was a health pack." The police were very kind. They stayed with me for a while. They took my statement. They told me my neighbor had some serious mental health problems. He had been arrested before for similar things. I did not sleep at all that night. I sat on my sofa with all the lights on until the sun came up. The apartment did not feel like my own space anymore. It felt unsafe. It felt tainted. Every little sound made me jump. The happy feeling of freedom was gone. It was replaced by a constant, low level of fear. The yellow walls felt like they were closing in on me. I looked at the little plant, Simon, on the windowsill. The apartment was not a home anymore. It was just a place where something terrible happened. The next day, I called my parents. I told them everything. My dad came that afternoon with his truck. We packed up all my things, the wobbly chair, the boxes of books, the cheap rug. I took Simon the plant. It took only a few hours to undo the little life I had started to build. As I carried the last box out, I looked at the door to apartment 2B. It had a police seal on it. I walked away without looking back. I moved back in with my parents. It felt like a defeat, but I knew I could not stay there. For months, I had trouble sleeping. The image of his blank face staring up at my window is still clear in my mind. It was my first taste of real independence, and my first lesson that the world can be a very strange and frightening place.